Paul Hudrick's here, and we'll get his take on the two teams that are left to face Philadelphia on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on Facebook and YouTube. There he is, Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider here from 97.3 ESPN.com. What's going on, Paul?
Just living the dream, Mike. You know me, man.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, last night you got Indiana 144 without LeVert, scored all over the place. They just beat the Sixers 2 weeks ago. Washington did not look good last night, shot it very poorly in that game. So let's get from you, which is the better matchup for Philly? Washington, Indiana, and I don't know if those two games last night factor in at all.
I'll say they factor in this regard. Bradley Beal did not look like Bradley Beal last night, and I can't imagine he's going to look like Bradley Beal for the next playing game, or if they manage to win that game, if he's going to look like Bradley Beal in a first-round playoff series. So that might be the reason why I would prefer the Washington Wizards. Also, just the Embiid matchup. Not to say Sabonis is going to shut Embiid down by any stretch, but I imagine that Indiana as a team would play better defense against Joel Embiid, would maybe be a tougher matchup for him. Yeah, I mean, given the preference of the two, I guess at this point I'm actually saying Washington.
Wow.
But at the same time, I don't think either is easy. You are correct that Indiana did lose LeVert, and he's likely not going to play, in Friday's or Thursday's game, and may miss some time going into the first round. But they still have Malcolm Brogdon. They still have Sabonis. They still have some talented players. They still have some T.J. McConnell, say what you want about him. The one thing he does well is he pressures guards, and that's the one thing that a guy like Shake Milton has really struggled against is kind of that ball pressure. So in that regard, Indiana may not be the best matchup. At the same time, I could see Washington, like, who knows with Bradley Beal's hurt right now, but he could still go out there and kind of light it up. Same with Westbrook. Westbrook was not very good against Boston. He had a bad night, like flat out. And so Boston took advantage of that. But Russell Westbrook could go off for a game or two.
Yeah.
And I think you saw the danger with the Celtics is just Tatum. When he gets hot, that was the only way, Mike, I saw the Celtics winning that game was if Tatum went nuts, and Tatum went nuts. But to get back to your original question, I would think that Washington is a slightly better matchup for the Sixers.
Yeah, you look at Washington's roster. I mean, as much as when you look at Brooklyn, it's like they got Durant, they've got Harden, they've got Kyrie. They've got a nice drop-off. Washington has Beal and Westbrook, and then a significant drop-off, especially if Bertans is only going to shoot 1 for 8, 0 for 7 from 3.
He had a rough night.
Yeah, he had a rough night. And really, I mean, who's their third guy, really?
Hachimura? Hachimura, when he got in foul trouble last night, so unfortunately we didn't get to see kind of his full game. He's actually had a pretty nice second season. But yeah, I mean that's probably it's Hachimura or it's Bertans.
I mean that's a team
sometimes it's been Ish Smith. Ish Smith has actually played pretty well for them.
Yeah, that's a team though I was going to say that's rolling. Ish Smith getting major minutes. They play. I mean Neto gets big minutes when he's healthy for them. That kind of shows you how limited. So when you get a chance to watch, like a lot of people don't watch Washington, they're seeing, well, this team's been playing pretty good. They got Westbrook, they got Beal. That's scary in itself. If you actually watch them, they don't have a whole heck of a lot else. They play less defense than a team of me, you, Blevins, McCormick, and Henning would play.
Right. Yeah, and that's when you look at Indiana, I think, the guys that they're missing, that's the big reason why they are where they are. Because, you look at Miles Turner, you look at LeVert, T.J. Warren, who, I think he played like 3 games this season, but he was so good in the bubble. We saw what he did against the Sixers. That's a guy who can score the basketball. So they're kind of missing more of those guys, I feel like. I mean, Turner is obviously a very good shot blocker, but they're missing a lot of scoring. They still have guys that are going to play defense. They're still going to play tough. They're going to play hard. And I think that's, to your point about Washington, they have Sabonis, they have Brogdon, they still have Justin Holiday. It's the drop-off isn't maybe as big as it is with Washington where it's Beal, Westbrook, and then name a guy after that. It's maybe not quite as drastic with Indiana. And they have guys that will play defense, that are hungry, that will play hard. So I think that's the difference. And that's maybe why it's listen, I mean, in any case, the Sixers should beat either team. It's just a matter of, maybe Indiana could give them win a game or two and give them a slightly tougher series, maybe give Embiid a slightly harder
Well,
time.
you just don't want, like last night, Indiana, they shot the ball really well. I mean, they scored 144 points in the game. They shot, like 45% from three-point range. You don't want to get a game early in the series where that ends up happening and then the doubt starts to get in. But I thought when Indiana played Philly a couple of weeks ago, Philly's up in the third. They're pretty much, holding them off. And I thought Indiana did a good job of making some changes defensively. Now, the Sixers didn't have an Embiid in that game, but I thought they did a good job in that game defensively in the fourth quarter that really changed the game. And then LeVert makes that big three late and kind of put it away. But they definitely are a team that I think doesn't have the flashiness name-wise as Washington does, but is probably a better overall team than the Wizards are. All right, Paul, Boston got a shot to win a game or two?
Maybe. It would have to be the same scenario we saw last night. If Jason Tatum goes for 50 points and Kemba Walker comes close to 30, they might win a game or two, but he's like, you know what I mean? They have no shot to win the series.
Well,
I can't imagine. Like, Tatum would have to just have a Kawhi Leonard against the Sixers type series against the Nets for them to have any remote shot.
Yeah, this is like one of those things where I guess, can Brad Stevens, he's always been the coach with the underdog team. That's where he's excelled. Like, hey, I don't have this good a team. He devises up some, defensive masterpiece that takes the three guys somehow out and makes Shamet and God, who else is even on that team?
Joe Harris.
Right. Those guys beat you.
Jeff Green.
I don't see it either, but I'm saying I guess that's does Boston have enough to make that series interesting? Probably not. It's probably a sweep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there might be one game or even two, who knows, where Jason Tatum just goes nuts, and that it's enough to overcome the fact that, listen, they're just not a good defensive team, the Celtics. They've been a bad defensive team all season long.
And they're small.
I mean, and you saw in the fourth quarter, to defend Brad Stevens a little bit, in the fourth quarter, he's got to play Romeo Langford and Aaron Nesmith in the fourth quarter. I mean, and he won. That's a game that they needed desperately, and he had to play those guys. Robert Williams got banged up, so I mean, they're on top of already missing Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams being banged up, and then just the fact that they, even when those guys were healthy, they weren't a very good defensive team. So you take those two out of the equation, and that's what it is. They just don't have the horses. Brad Stevens can scheme it up all he wants, but to stop those three guys, you need horses, and they just don't have them.
Yeah, Legler will join me tonight. I know he likes Miami in the series. I've seen him say that on SportsCenter. Give me your thoughts on Miami and Milwaukee.
I think Miami could for sure win that series. I think they have.
Well, they beat them last year in the playoffs. I mean, so that's not.
100, yeah. I will say this. That is true, and that's going to give Miami.
What point did we flip to where, look, it's all season. Miami's just who they are. To they're better than they are than we've been giving them credit for.
The last couple of weeks of the season, when they started to get a little healthy, I think that's when, and Jimmy Butler kind of turned it up a notch. Bam Adebayo turned it up a notch. I think that's where the narrative kind of flipped. And it's fair. Like, yeah. Are they a better team than they've probably shown throughout the year? Yeah, because quite frankly, Mike, they weren't good for most of the season. They have not been a good basketball team. I get they've had a lot of health issues. They've done a lot with the health and safety protocols. They make a trade for Oladipo. That doesn't work out at all. He has to get surgery. They lose a guy in Olynyk who looked great for Houston down the stretch, who has been better than Bielitsa, who they traded for. So some kind of misfortunes there along the way, but Ariz has played pretty well for them. He's a guy that kind of fits that Jay Crowder role that Jay Crowder was very good for them last year, and he kind of is slipping into that role. I will say, though, I don't want to go ahead. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I think the Heat are definitely going to win this series. The Bucks are better. I think a couple things. One, I think the Bucks are a better team than they were last year. Drew Holiday, first and foremost. I mean, now they get to throw Drew Holiday on Jimmy Butler. Are you kidding me? Like that's night and day, the difference that makes. And then on top of that, they have a better, I wouldn't say better bench, but they have a different bench. Portis is going to be an interesting matchup for them. Bam Adebayo is going to have to go out in the perimeter and defend him. Not to say he can't. Of course he can. But that's, it's a different dynamic, I think, than last year. Giannis is a better player, I think, than he was last year. Bam Adebayo, again, did an outstanding job against Giannis last year. But Giannis is not the same player. I would say offensively, I think Giannis is actually a slightly better player. I think he kind of took a step back defensively, if anything, this season. Well, and you still got Middleton, who's a solid player.
I was going to say, you didn't even get to Middleton yet.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They have that Milwaukee team is a good team, man. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I think the Heat, and then not only that, Mike, I don't think it can be discounted. Like the Bucks know they lost last year in a weird situation in that bubble and everything going on. And the Heat, for whatever reason, it really galvanized them, that bubble, and they really came together and played really good basketball. But if you don't think that that's on the Bucks' mind, what happened last year, like you don't think that's going to be a factor, that's 100% going to be a factor. So I would actually, if anything, I would kind of lean towards the Bucks. But with that said, Miami is a better team than what they've shown in the regular season, and they got a shot 100% to win that series.
Yeah. And by the way, you mentioned Drew Holiday. I just think he's such a difference maker over Eric Bledsoe, who was abysmal last year.
Close.
Not even close. Yeah. Abysmal Bledsoe was in those playoffs. Holiday is fantastic. So I thought it was such an underappreciated, under the radar move by them, because they tried to get who
they tried to get him and Bogdanovich.
Bogdanovich, right. And then when Bogdanovich didn't end up going there, it was like, that kind of stinks. They got Drew Holiday, they got Giannis, and they already had Middleton. And Lopez was a great, not as good this year as he was last year, I don't think, but still a nice, they got a nice – that Bucks team is definitely – I feel like everyone's either Nets or Sixers, and then you have this little tiny part of people who are like, oh, that Bucks team is a lot better this year. We'll see. That series should be a lot of fun because Miami could beat them, and then that could be chaos and should be fun. All right, give me your kind of thoughts on what's going to happen with this Lakers-Warriors tonight. Are we going to get a game like last night where this play-in game turns into a massive disappointment, or are we going to get what everybody's hoping for, this epic one-game showdown?
It 100% depends on Steph Curry. If Steph Curry just has one of those nights that we've seen him have a lot of during the second half of the season, and he goes for like 50 points, this could be a game. If the Lakers defend him well, or he just has an off night, maybe just doesn't have one of those kind of epic kind of nights, I think the Lakers kind of run away with it because I just think the Lakers are a flat out much better basketball team. So I think that's what it depends on. It's going to depend. Steph's got to go supernova, which he is more than capable of doing. If he does that, we got ourselves in a basketball game and a really good one. If he doesn't, then I think the Lakers the Lakers should be, I think, are the better team and should come out on top.
All right. That game tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN, that would make the Lakers the 7, and they would play Phoenix. That would mean the Warriors would play the winner of the Memphis-San Antonio game. And by the way, Memphis, it's just because it's Memphis. Nobody really realizes, but that team, people think of San Antonio sometimes as that team that was always good, made the playoffs all those years in a row. Certainly not the same, but they're still interesting with DeRozan, but Ja Morant. That's a very young Memphis team. I like Memphis in the early game.
It's I would probably lean towards Memphis, but yeah, you can't count out that San Antonio team because they do have your name, like DeRozan is a guy who again can go off at a moment's notice. He's just a really high level NBA scorer. Keldon Johnson's a guy who's really developed his game. They have a lot of young guys who I think have really Derek White. You mentioned DeJounte Murray. I mean, they have guys that can really play. It's just they've also they've dealt with injuries and they're also still a young team. So I think Memphis and San Antonio are actually a lot more similar than maybe we think.
Yeah.
So that could be an intriguing matchup. But again, when you have like a superstar guy like a Ja Morant, like he's a guy again who could just take a game over, whether it's scoring or whether it's facilitating on either end. He's a guy that could really take a game over. So it's I think those teams are a lot closer matched than maybe people think, and I think that could be a really competitive game. I truly do.
Oh, it's going to be. I think that one might be of the 4, may end up being the best because it's the least anticipated. But if Memphis makes the playoffs, they would be the youngest playoff team since the Thunder team that had Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. You're going back 10 years at 24 years of age. That is the average age, and they have the second lowest amount of playoff games on their roster. The only team that has less is the Timberwolves. They only have 112 games of playoff experience on their entire roster. So that's a very inexperienced Memphis team. But for those of you out there who haven't seen a lot of Memphis, they're a lot of fun. Valanciunas has been fantastic for them. For those of you who don't even remember that
underrated
he played
guy
in Memphis,
really
absolutely. And, of course, Ja Morant is a lot of fun. All right, Paul Hudrick, the Sixers. What is your prediction for game time Sunday? I think the Knicks game is at 2. I think I did see a little slippage of that. I did see if you go to DraftKings, They have a line on that game, and it says Sunday, 2 o'clock.
If I'm guessing, if I'm being, I would imagine the Sixers aren't going to get a great slot. Like, right. I imagine it's a non-prime slot because they're not anticipating that. Like, if it's Sixers Pacers, for us, yes. But even if it was
I was talking about this yesterday. If it was Sixers Boston, which is a traditional historic, but you got the Knicks, the Lakers, and the Warriors all playing possibly on the same day as you.
Sure, right. So that, I mean, no matter what, they're probably getting, you know. If there's like a 12:30 game, like
right, that's what I said. The Saturday doesn't have the 12:30 game. They're going 2, 4:30, 6:30, or no, right. 2, 4:30, 8, and 10:30. I don't know if Sunday is going to follow the same suit, but I would imagine
it would be earlier.
I would imagine that the Sunday game you could get a 12:30, 2. Or 2:30 tip or something like that, and then 2 West Coast games at night. So you might get an early Sixer game on a day that's supposed to be gorgeous out. Man.
Right. It might happen.
Man. All right. Paul will
but at least it'll be done early. It'll be done early, and then you got the rest of your night.
Yes, and by the way, I did send a text message up there, and it looks like it could be multiple of us in that building.
That would be wonderful. I would very much enjoy that.
Yes, they are trying to. A little birdie said that they might try to help me out. Considering I haven't been to a game all year. This is the first time I haven't been to a game. Holy moly.
Offered in our defense.
I know. Well, I've been saving it for the playoffs, you know. All right, man. We might see you Sunday.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, you know, Paul and Kevin do a great job, and Jay covering the 76ers for our website, 973ESPN.com. And, of course, the Sixers playoff games can all be heard right here on 97.3 ESPN